Really positive and good with JavaScript. Okay, hey, welcome back. We are COMP125 in the summer 2020 semester. I'm broadcasting now. And we're lesson 4, part 2 of our broadcast, and we're talking about our setup again and debugging. Finally, we'll get to the debugging part and the JavaScript piece. We did a lot of setup last day, and we're going to continue to do setup today because I know some people are having some issues. So let's get to that part before we hit this thing. So again, last day what we did was we had set up Visual Studio Code. I'm just going to bring up Visual Studio Code from last day, and this is kind of what we did. We set up, our little project here, which is also tied, and it's also up online on GitHub. So please take a look at the GitHub link. I want to show you this. So again, on your eCentennial for week 4, I put a bunch of stuff. Like there's a ton of things here. I guess I could have organized this differently and maybe broken this down into another module or whatever, like a sub-module for like external links. But there's a bunch of stuff to do. Also, if you're someone who needs support from a language perspective and you missed last class, you can always watch YouTube live, and it'll give you closed captioning support and a bunch of other stuff to help you along. But if you notice, there's a GitHub link for week 4, and that is where I've got the code going on. So if I actually click onto that, you can see it's going to take me here, and this is what I did with you last day. So that was like 2 days ago. Okay, so that's one. I'm going to talk about GitHub a little bit more today and how to set all that up and what all that means. And I do apologize for those people who already have that information from COMP301. Okay, so that's this, and these were all the links and everything else that I've got you to set up. If you watch the video from day 1 that we were together, it'll go through the setup and everything else that I want you to do. However, some people are having issues here, and because of Windows PowerShell, you get some weird messages, right? And what are some of the messages? Someone sent me an email. Can anyone repeat the message that you're going to get here other than unrecognized command? Unrecognized command in here means something else. So can anyone repeat one of those messages that they get here when they try and do a yarn install or an npm install or something like that in here? Then we can go to that problem. I want to try this first because sometimes what you get is your system has been set up so that you can't run scripts, that kind of thing, in PowerShell. And there's a fix for PowerShell. But the way to do that is to run PowerShell as an administrator. Okay, and then there's actually a fix online. So can someone give me that link? There it is. Got unauthorized access error. Now give me the exact error, Christy. Exact error that you get. If you copy and paste the exact error, and we'll talk about that in a sec. Because I want to show you how to kind of fix these problems, right? Anything that you see in the terminal, someone else has gotten that error, right? At some point. So for you guys, the most important thing is, let's see if we can resolve it together. Okay, here we go. So file yarn init cannot be loaded because running script. This is perfect. Cannot be loaded because running script is disabled on the system. Okay, so this is the error that you're getting. So it looks like if I was going to take this on Google Chrome here, and I'm going to search for that. Take a look at this. It's already coming up. VS Code, right? So, I mean, there's not much to do here. You can see that. So let's take a look at Stack Overflow, which has a solution. It says the terminal integrated shell args Windows execution policy bypass. That's one way of doing it. So that's specific to Visual Studio, but you're going to get this problem again in other places. So that may not be the way you want to go. The way you really want to go is set execution policy. This part right here, set execution policy, execution policy. This, right? Remote signed. I think this is a good solution, and the way to do this is to go to your Windows PowerShell. Okay, so and you need to do this as a super user or an admin. So you go here and you type in PowerShell. Okay, and so once PowerShell comes up, this you're not in as an admin. Let's do that again as admin now. Okay, so here, okay, I type PowerShell. You can see it comes up here. Right click when you come to this point. Run as an admin, right? it's going to give you the little window that says, are you sure you want to do this? And you are. And then from there, type in this command or copy this command from this link. Okay, again, it's pretty simple. So you type in this one. It doesn't really matter. It has to be something like this. So I'm going to copy this, go over. I'll put this in the chat for you guys. So that's the so you don't have to find it. There it is. Okay, so I put it in the chat. And then here, what I want to do is right-click, and I want to paste. So a couple ways to do that is you can just edit paste in PowerShell if you've got this. Let's try it again. So again, copy it, go back to PowerShell. You can right-click, or you can paste, right? Or if you're really not, if it's not working for you, like it's not working for me, let's try that again. Paste, or just type it in. How about we just type it? Haha. Set execution policy dash execution policy, and then remote signed. That's the key one. Remote signed, right? Remote signed means that you're good. And then the scope is the current user. This is good because other users on your system won't get this current user. Okay, and if I press enter, it says the execution policy helps protect from scripts that you cannot trust. Changing the execution policy might expose you to security risks. Are you sure? Yes, we're sure. We're developers. Yes, enter. That's it. And then you're good to go. Okay, so that's your fix for that error. All right. And that'll fix most of you when it comes to this kind of stuff. And again, you can find this on Stack Overflow and other places. That should take care of most of the problems that you might have. So let's try this out now. So if I was to run something like a yarn inside of my terminal window. So if I go yarn, enter, I should still get this. It should still work in terminal window. If your yarn by itself doesn't work just by doing this, that would be bad. Right? Same thing with npm. If you go npm and enter, and it doesn't do anything, or gives you some really weird command or response, like unrecognized command, like for example, let's say you typed in, npm, but it was you got something back, and if I type blah, you'll get this message. The term blah is not recognized, the same name of a commandlet, function, script file, or blah blah blah. This is a different error, and if you got this error, it's because it's an environment variables error, right? And sometimes what you have to do is reinstall stuff, making sure that your Visual Studio Code is shut down, right? Because remember, Visual Studio Code has this little PowerShell or terminal window, bash, whatever it is, depending on the system you're using. If you're using Mac, that is enabled, and when it's up, even though you can't see it, it's still here, right? So make sure you shut down Visual Studio Code, and then you'll be good. HS, sorry, but if you don't rename yourself within a few minutes, I'm going to have to remove you. Please rename yourself to the name on eCentennial. If you got my email, HS is not sufficient to log into our class. Okay, please do that now. Okay, so any questions around this? This should cover most people's issues, the two things I talked about. So one way is, again, what you want to do is you need to reinstall in this case, and the other case is using it with PowerShell. You need to have admin rights on PowerShell in order for you to do that. If you don't, then you won't be able to do it. Okay. All right. So that is this piece. So last day, what we did was we set this up. I'm going to do this like I never did it before. I'm going to do it all again, and I'm going to do it super fast this time, and go through the process just in case you missed it. And I'm doing it again because it's good to see it one more time. And so if you've watched the video and you're watching this video again, just skip through this part because I'm going to do the same thing again. Okay? I find that when I do this the second time, people grab onto it a little better. Okay, so again, here's COMP125 lesson 4. Let's make another one. So here on the desktop somewhere, I'm going to make a new folder, and we're going to call this, just for practice guys, 125 and then M2020 lesson 4 part 2. All right, so we're trying it again. No problem. I'm glad that it works for you, Sam. All right, so here we are. We've got this thing, and I'm going to pull up Visual Studio Code like is it for the first time. If you've only run Visual Studio Code for the first time, you won't see this. You'll see. I'm just going to close my my folder. Again, notice there's close folder, and I don't have the. I've clicked away the the welcome message, so I don't get that welcome message anymore, right? It's up to you. Oh, there it is. Haha, what worked? What's new in bookmarks? But typically I don't get that. And then if you drag and drop your folder from your, let's say desktop or whatever you have it in, and you just drag it in here into this gray area, it will start your use command as my default editor in VS Code instead of changing PowerShell permissions. This solution worked for me. Yeah, it's fine too. That's okay. As long as you're okay with it, you don't need to use PowerShell. All right, so now if you look here, I want to make some new folders. So again, this is file, this is folder. Let's make the folders. So my folder structure for this course is going to be like this. Contents, that's where my CSS is going to live. And then I'm also going to make a mistake and put scripts in here. I talked about this. If you have this situation, it's not good. You have to make sure that scripts is on the same level as content. So you can just drag scripts out like this. Okay, so that's the way it's going to be. So content and scripts folders are separate and they're outside on the same level. Okay, and here I want to make a brand new index.html page. I'm just going to make them all empty for now. I'm also going to put together a new file, which is our app.css here and our app.js here. So these are all the things that we did last day, just a lot quicker. And here I'm going to just put a little comment that says, you know, custom CSS goes here, just to kind of talk, just to remind you guys where that is. I'm going to save, so Control S to save. Here on my app.js, we're going to put together that IFI. Does anyone remember what that IFI stands for? Tell it to me in chat if you remember. Without looking at the other day's work. What does it stand for? Anyone? You guys forgot already? Ah, there we go. No, it's not immediately invocable. It's close. Immediately invoked, yes. Immediately invoked function expression. So this is something that might be on a test. I might ask you about this. I might say, what is an IFI? And then you should choose what that is. I might make some funny acronyms. And then the way it works is function, so the keyword function, followed by parentheses, followed by curly braces, and then at the end, parentheses and a semicolon, right? And then inside the function, this is a closure, so anything that's in here gets trapped, all the variables and stuff, so they can't escape into the global cache, which is what this thing is. And so now I'm going to do function start. Okay, here we go. And then down in here, I'm going to go window.addEventListener on load, call the function start, right? That's what this means. This start now becomes the callback function for this event handler. Remember what an event listener does. There's two parts to an event listener if you don't know this already. And we're going to talk about events more in JavaScript. But the one part is the add event listener. Notice that I'm not using the on method. On methods deprecated. Don't use those. Use add event listener. All right, add event listener, and then the type of event load, followed by a callback function. Or if I really wanted to, I could write this differently, which we're going to talk about later. And here, this is a named function. There's different ways of writing functions. We're going to go over that today again, just as a review, because some of you may know or may not, or maybe you were taught one way or the other way. This is the named function way of doing things. So here I'm going to just do a console log, and the name is we're just going to say app started. That's just our default, right? Okay, so this is a little function. We got app.css here and app.js there. Index.html happens to be empty, but we're going to fill it up. HTML5, we're going to use Emmet built into Visual Studio Code to do one of these. This is going to help us do our title. So this is going to be the title of our class. So COMP125 in the summer 2020 semester, and it's lesson 4. And we're going to say part 2, but somewhere else. And here, what we're going to do for now is we're going to put a div tag with a class of content, right? Container. That's it, container. And then inside the container, we're also going to put an h1 tag with an ID of main header, right? And something that's going to say, hello world. Classic computer 101. And we're just going to click on this, and it's going to produce all that stuff. Okay, so that's what we do, this is Emmet that's built into VS Code. We're going to put some comments, right? So the comments are structured like this. This is the beginning of the comments for HTML. This is the end. This is just review for HTML people. And then this is our CSS section, right, where we're going to put our CSS. Down here, we're going to put our JavaScript section. That's what I did last day, so you won't miss anything. Okay, and here what I did was I made a link to my my current style sheet, which is my custom style sheet. This should come last, so ./content/app.css, followed by script source, right, which I want to link together /scripts, and then app.js. So now I've linked my app.js and my app.css into my index.html. But this is not enough. Now we want to load in our scripts for Bootstrap, Font Awesome, and jQuery in order for us to work. By the way, in the next version of Bootstrap, I think Bootstrap 5 Alpha has been released. And they talked about getting rid of jQuery altogether, which is totally cool. I'm really happy they're doing that finally. My laptop has started crashing really often, installing all these extensions, modules, virtual machines. Whatever. Any tips? Yes, buying a new laptop. We'll talk about that after. You want to stick around, Harris? Then I'll go over it with you, okay? All right, so let's go through this. So scripts, and then what I want to do now is the command line stuff. So control backtick brings up the command line, all right, or the terminal. Control backtick. Backtick is the character underneath your escape key. It's also shared by the tilde and backtick, that little funny character. Backtick looks like this. All right, and what that does, it brings up the terminal. It's toggleable, right, like this. And what I want to do now, we've installed Yarn, we've installed NPM, we've installed Node.js. Those things I'm not going to do, but however, please see the fine video for installing all those piece parts and Git. So you should be able to do at this point the following. I should be able to do something like git ---- version. So try that. If you can't do this, you need to install Git. You should be able to do node ---- version. If you don't get this, please install node. npm ---- version should be the latest version. It could be something like 16.4.5 or something else. 6. something is good. Anything 6 and above, because it's the latest version or close to npm. And then finally yarn ---- version. These are all the things we've included in our downloads. Those are 4 downloads we did last day. Okay. So you should be able to do all those things here. This is just checking to see that they're all there for you. Okay. We also included a new package. So I'm going to clear this screen. We also did a new package called LiteServer. So I did kind of an npm install Lite-server. If you've already done this, you don't have to do it. -G for global. All right. If you just left this out, it would be here locally. We don't want that. We want it for every command line. So that's why we're putting the -G or -G. And then we're going to press enter. If you did it again, it's not going to hurt your system. All it's going to do is, yes, you can find all the downloads in the previous video, all the things I did. But I would go with, the first one would be Git. The first one would be Visual Studio Code. Second one would be Git. And then I would go with Node.js. And then Yarn. And finally, LiteServer, which I just did. Okay, if you did all those things, then you're going to be good to go. All right, so now you can see that I've downloaded and installed LiteServer again. Not going to hurt me. If I already have the package, all it's going to do is take the latest package and overwrite it. So it's not going to hurt you if you install a package again. Okay. So now that I've got all that going, I want to use Yarn to install stuff. Last day, what I did was I said like Yarn add. That's the keyword. So add is the verb. In npm, you can do the same thing with Yarn that you can do with npm. If I was going to use npm instead of Yarn, npm install is what you would use, right? There's a difference between npm and Yarn. Yarn is a quicker, the quicker cousin of npm. It does actually install things quicker. It's almost more recommended to use Yarn now than npm for local packages. For global packages, I still recommend npm. Okay, that's just me. So I want to install some local packages. I'm going to install Yarn, but in order for me to do that, I need to use it or execute a yarn init. Yarn init. And what yarn init does is it creates that package.json file. So yarn init. It asks me for some questions. I'm going to type this lowercase, and it's wrong actually. Less than 4 I spelled wrong. Part 2, I'm going to fix that in a sec. So it does this, and then you can accept the version. The description is a demo project for COMP125 less than 4, let's say. And then we can accept that one. The URL we can accept, put your author's name in there. License ID accept, private accept, and we're done. It just creates a default JSON file, package.json, which you can see as the manifest for your entire application that we're making. And yes, we are making an application with JavaScript. All right, let me fix that problem before I go crazy, because I can't stand errors. I'm just going to close off Visual Studio Code, and then I'm just going to rename this thing right here. You have to close it or else it won't work, but I made a typing mistake, so let's just fix that. And we're going to go back. I'm going to launch VS Code, and you're going to see because that folder doesn't exist anymore, I'm going to get nothing, right? Because it's looking for that folder by default. So we're just going to drag and drop this in here, and then we're going to just launch that folder again. All right, so we're back. So here's our package.json. You can see that this is all good. We've got all these piece parts that we need to get going. Control backtick is going to bring up our terminal window again, and then what I can do is do those other installations. So I'm going to bring this a little higher so you guys can see it a little better, and I'm going to do the following. So yarn add. This is now local package stuff, right? So I'm using yarn add jQuery. And I can do jQuery by itself, but I can also do yarn all at once. jQuery, Bootstrap, as well as all the other packages. It's at Fort Awesome / font awesome -free is what I want. Those are the 3 packages I want, plus something called popper.js. Those are the 4 packages that I want. It doesn't have to be in a specific order. You can mix this order up and it'll still work. If I press enter now, it's going to go out, find the packages, resolve them, and install them. Done in one blow. Are you with me? Put your hand up, or you can say the thumbs up, or whatever you want to do if you're with me. I want to know if you guys are good. Awesome. Great. Yeah, the chat is not as good as the hand, or the try and use the symbols, guys, as much as possible. I can see that. It's really, really quick. The chat, it's just going to fill up, right? So symbols are better. Okay, so now I'm good, right? I've got my node modules in here. You can see that these are all been loaded. They've been downloaded for me. I don't have to go to any websites to get them. It's automatically, and this is the way we do it nowadays, okay? We don't go to a website and download stuff. That's old school. All right, so now that we have those installed, you can also see inside the package.json file a list of dependencies. These are all dependencies for making all this stuff work, but we need to link all this stuff to our index.html page in order for us to have functionality. Let's do that now. So just like we did last time, before the custom CSS we made, I'm going to link the other 2 CSS parts, link, right, and then it's CSS. And we want to do, just erase this stuff that's in here, /, and again, node modules is where it gets put. And we want to start with Bootstrap, and then dist for distribution, and then CSS. And we want to look at bootstrap.min.css. Min means minified or compressed. It's faster. And then the next one is link CSS. And then again, it would be / node modules at Fort Awesome. There, that one. Font Awesome free, and then it's CSS. All.min.css is what we want. Okay, so that's the one. Now you might say, wait a minute, Tom, if you're someone who's quick and you've been around the web a little bit, you might say, what about the CDNs? You know, why do we have to actually use this here? Why not use the content delivery network? That's what the CDN is, right? So if I look at CDNs, you know, for Bootstrap, right, you can see that there's a common CDN content delivery network for Bootstrap. So if I go CDN, there's a bunch of them. Microsoft has a bunch of the Microsoft CDN, and there's other places you can get that stuff. For example, Google has a CDN. So I can say something like jQuery CDN, right? And if you looked at that, here's the CDN, it's code.jquery.com, and what it does is it gives you a link that you can connect to your to your app, as opposed to something that's inside of your code. And you might like, wait, CDN, that's bad, right? You have a link that you have to go to. Actually, that's good. In distribution state, not development, in distribution, it's far better that we use the CDN in real life when we're actually finished developing. No, Harris, I would stay with the download first. And then we can move to CDN. Why? CDNs, you may not get the version you want. But the great thing about it is most people who go and grab jQuery is everywhere. And it's already probably been cached in your browser somewhere. So instead of downloading it, what your browser does, it checks to see if it's already been loaded. And if it's already been loaded, it won't download it again if it's a CDN. However, if it's not a CDN, and if it's a link like this, it'll download it or it'll link to it right away. So for your client, the person who's the user who's using your website, if you were going to put it up like this, they would have to download the CSS, the all.min.css, and you would have to download this, which would probably take a couple of milliseconds nowadays. But in the past, this would slow down your download, and people don't like to wait. Not even 1 second. For 1 second, if you wait 1 second for a website to load, something's wrong, right? But that's the way it is nowadays, right? So before, CDNs are a big thing, and they're still big now when you have your final form of your application. For us, for here, we're not going to do that. We're going to actually attach our, by the way, I've locked the meeting now, so anyone who comes in is going to go to the waiting area. So again, for anyone else, who goes in here, it's okay. We can use these in distribution, in our development. And in distribution, we would change this to the CDNs. All right, let's do the same thing down here for our scripts. We're just going to do 2 of them. So script source. And again, what we want to do is we want to include jQuery. So again, it's /node modules, and then jQuery, and then dist, and then jQuery.min.js. That links jQuery to our files. And then the last one is bootstrap again. So this, /node modules, bootstrap, and then dist, and then JS, and then bootstrap.min.js. So it's different. Bootstrap.min.css, bootstrap.min.js. There's the JavaScript component that helps with the interactability of Bootstrap, the Bootstrap front-end CSS framework that we're using to make it fully functional. So this would be third-party modules. So we always kind of put a little thing that says like third-party JavaScript libraries or modules. And down here, this is your own custom stuff. So this is app scripts or JavaScript, that you make on your own, right? So, and you can put other comments in here as well. But those are the basics for the stuff that you want, okay? So now that we have this, one thing we did was we're able to test this with LiteServer. So again, pulling up the terminal, I can just type in LiteServer. Popper is called by Bootstrap automatically on the back end. As long as it's inside of your node modules, you're good to go. LiteServer, if I call that up, it'll pull up my default web server and my default, my web browser. My web browser defaulted is Chrome. And like I said, a nice way to work is to put kind of Chrome on one side. So I'll put this on this side. And then let's just I'll move this away so you don't have to see it. And then what you want is, from a development perspective, it might be nice if you can put Visual Studio Code on the left or on the right, depending on how you like to code. I usually like to put them together. You can also use Windows to do it for you. You add jQuery, Bootstrap, and ForTOS and free Popper.js. Is that correct? Sorry for late. I'm watching YouTube streaming. Yes, I added all those things in there. And by the way, if you can always, if I add a PowerShell, one thing with PowerShell is I can always kind of arrow up to find all those things. So there it is. This is what it looks like. Yarn add jQuery Bootstrap Fort awesome at font awesome free Popper.js. I don't want to do this again, but that's what it is. Okay, so let me go back to that. All right, so going to this now, you can see now that I'm ready to go with the next part. So you see Hello World here is a different font than the standard font, but this is quite boring. We want to do a couple things now. What I want to do is install a Navbar to make this look nice and to have some kind of functionality while we code JavaScript, right? Because JavaScript with nothing in there, I mean, it's pretty boring, right? So let's fix this problem. So if you go to getbootstrap.com, if you do that and you go here and you go click on Get Started, then under Get Started, you'll see that there is a simple template that you can use for Bootstrap. One thing that it also includes is the meta style. So if you didn't have a chance to use Emmet, you can always download this. It kind of gives you some of the same stuff. And now here you can see that they're using the CDNs. So if I was going to put this larger, you can actually use the CDNs for Bootstrap and jQuery. They're all listed right here for you. So if you really wanted to use the CDNs, here's an example of all the CDNs installed on your machine, right? So this is what it would look like. So that's this. It talks about Bootstrap and what Bootstrap is. Bootstrap uses a 12-column grid. And if you think about the columns, each of them is approximately 8% of your screen. And what you can do is you can associate or put elements in different columns to kind of space out your screen the way you want. So I want a Navbar like this. And the great thing about Bootstrap is it has, on the left, all kinds of components. If you click on components on the left, and if I scroll down, you can see that there's a Navbar. So all I did was I went to the site, getbootstrap.com. On the left, click components, and then halfway down approximately is Navbar. Click on Navbar. And it talks about how it works and all this kind of stuff, which is pretty cool. And then down in here, it gives you an example of a Navbar. I want to take this Navbar and modify it for our purposes. So what you can do is click copy over here to clipboard. I want to get all this. Copy. It's a big thing, but don't worry about it. We'll go through it. Copy. And I'm going to go back to my files here, right? And what I want to do is I want to paste it, but I want to paste the Navbar above my container with my hello world, right? So up here, I want to make another comment. So we'll say that this is our main navigation, right? That's where it's going to be. And then inside here, we're going to copy that or paste that stuff. So Control V to paste. And you're going to see a long list of stuff. Notice on the right, I have a little kind of like a mini map of where everything is. I can also scroll up from here in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to just hide this for now, so to give us more real estate. Okay, so let's go through the Navbar, starting at the top. Nav. This is semantic HTML. You want to use nav at the top. You could also put the Navbar inside of a header, which isn't a bad thing. So if I was to undo this, okay, and then I made a header element, right? So there's a header. And inside the header, I chose to put my nav. That's not a bad thing to do either. That kind of, kind of separates the header. Header is a semantic thing. For people with accessibility issues, this is a good thing to see. Header, nav. Okay, so inside the header, I have a Navbar. Cool. All right, and notice it says Navbar expand large, Navbar light, background light. We're going to change this in a sec. But let's get rid of the stuff we don't need. Okay, so then there's a button. I'm just going to space it out for you to see this. The Navbar brand is the first thing on the left. So that Navbar brand appears on the left-hand side. If I was to save this the way it is right now, by the way, and if I went back to my little web page that I've been looking at, this one, you can see now I have a Navbar immediately. It's just there, right? I didn't do anything. I've literally just copy-pasted from our Bootstrap Online, and I have a little Navbar. It's not exactly what I want. I want it to be darker than this. And by the way, you can select colors and all that stuff. But for now, I want it there, but I don't want this disabled link. I don't want this drop down, which is useless. And, I want these links to be on the right-hand side, not the left-hand side. I don't want this search bar. And this Navbar should say COMP125. Okay, so how to do that is, and I'll start with this and then I'll modify it after. Where it says on line 18 for me, under the nav heading, where it says A class Navbar brand, this is where you put your brand. You can actually put an image here. if you want to, or whatever. It's also clickable, so if you wanted to click on the brand and go to your website, you could do that here. But here what I want to do is put in the words COMP125. Okay, so that's what I want to put there. That's our brand, COMP125. Okay, cool. Next, button. It says collapse, Navbar supported content. Okay, and it says the Navbar toggler icon. Okay, what that means is, if I go back to my thing here, when I have a mobile sized website, so if I do something like this, you get this little hamburger. That's what this thing is, a hamburger, right? And if I click onto it, I'm going to get this responsive kind of, drop down that comes here like this, right? So this hamburger is what's happening here. This button is the hamburger, okay? So we don't want to kill that. We want that, okay? Let's go back to this for a second. Let's expand this again. All right, so yeah, so Navbar, we got the button there, and we got the toggler icon, and now we're going to go to the next part. So now we have a div tag. Okay, a div tag, it says Navbar supported content, and it says Navbar nav mr auto. Okay, so this is where our UL is. Our UL is an unordered list. This is all of our links now, right? Each link is inside of a list item. So we can see that each link, I'm just separating them so you can see them. List item. And then we have here a drop down. Remember I said I don't want the drop down? Let's just delete this drop down, which basically goes from this LI all the way to this LI. So I'm just going to get rid of this. Okay? This link I want. This link I'm going to keep. This is the home link. Home. This is a new link that I want. I want to make 5 links. I want to make our 5-page site. Here, this one here, it says it's disabled. I don't want this one, so I'm just going to get rid of that one. Okay. And we also have a form for the search bar. I don't want that one either. Let's get rid of this search bar as well. So now it's kind of come down to something that looks like this. I'm just going to take away the spaces for you so you can see what it looks like. I mean, it's much bigger, much smaller now, like this. Okay. So here's where we want to do some changes. And I'm going to put this on the right size. It should kind of look like this. Okay. So I've deleted everything else, just these things. And what I want to do here, I'm going to put this up on GitHub in a second, so you can copy it from GitHub if you need to. But if I press save now and go back to my page, you can see now that I have just COMP125 home and link, right? Remember, it updates automatically, right? This is a great time to put this on the right side, right? Here's I'm going to put this on the right side here, okay? I'm going to put this on the left side, right? So I just double clicked here to get that happening. Left side, right side. Okay, cool. And you can see now that I have these links. If I want to expand it, double click, makes the page large, and it takes it out of mobile size. Double click, puts it back. Okay? So this is kind of a way to work. You can see that this is good. So link. It doesn't make sense that I have this thing link. So I want to have my 5-page site. So home, right? Products, services, about us, and contact us. Those are the 5 pages that you can see in almost every website in one form or another. Let's make the first link. So the first one should be products. Let's say we have some products to sell. That's where it would be, right? And I'm going to take this link here and copy paste, right? So copy paste. We're going to call this services. Oh, there, services. And then copy paste. Don't worry, I'm going to fix this in a sec. And then about us. And finally, contact us. The 5-page site that I'm going to ask you to make actually is one of your assignments. Okay, so about us. There we go. And this would be contact us. Okay, so you can see how this works, right? You've got home, products, services, about us, contact us, let's save. And when we go back here, you can see that it updated the browser. Now you can see all those links. Home, products, services, about us, contact us. Okay, that's all I've done. All I've done is change the links so that they look how they look. Notice that home is highlighted because it has nav active, nav item active. We're going to change it to JavaScript and fix this up so depending on which page we're on, it'll show active. But for now, nav item active is only for the home page. There's also an extra piece we don't need, this SR only. We can get rid of this. So this C-span, this span right here, let's get rid of it. Okay, we don't need that. It'll do the same thing for us. Notice it doesn't change anything. If I go back, you can see that it's still home, still highlighted, still the same. All right, so all we've done is just cleaned up our navbar to do this. Hey, this is a great place to put it up on GitHub, right? So first, we're going to make a GitHub repo. So I'm going to go to github.com and then /Centennial College. I'm going to double click on this to make it larger so you can see it. And this is what I did for COMP123 today. Let's make another one, new. So I'm going to go to the new, and if you were using your own website or your own repository, in your own GitHub repository, your own GitHub account, I'll be okay. Click new, and then you're going to get this message. I don't want to make it private. I made that mistake too many times. I'm going to go to public, and then I'm going to type in the name. So COMP125, right? M2020, lesson 4, part 2. Notice if I just did lesson 4, it says, nope, does not compute. I already have a lesson 4 from you guys, right? But I'm going to go lesson 4, part 2, because that's what this thing is. This is another example of what we did slightly differently. I'm going to click just create repository here. And what this is going to do is it's going to give me some steering directions on how to make the repository work. And I've already we're going to do all these things in a second, okay? So here I've just made an empty repository, and we'll talk about what this is in a sec. Okay, and then I'm just going to double click on this now. So again, double click. I'm going to go move this up higher so I can add it to GitHub. And this is the process. Again, this is for you to watch me to do. Git init. Git init initializes the Git repository here in this place. A repository is like a container. And what it does is we're going to take a snapshot of our current code base. Snapshot. And then what we're going to do is we're going to push this to the cloud repository on GitHub. Okay, so git init. Git add dot. Git add is the verb. Add is the verb, just like yarn add. Git is the command. Git add. What do we want to add? Dot. Dot is a wildcard character that adds everything. All right. Git add dot. Okay, and then press enter. It just adds everything, and we don't have any nothing filtered because even our node modules and all that stuff, which you shouldn't put up on GitHub because it doesn't belong to us, and it's also clutter, is there. Why? This way you can just download it and you're good. All right. That's why I'm doing it, not because it's for ease, not for necessarily for efficiency. All right, so now the next command. So git init, git add dot, git commit. The next one, git commit. Commit is the verb. Minus M for message. That's the control. And then we're going to say what message is it. We're going to say added main navigation. Okay, we just added it. It's not complete yet. So this is our snapshot. We're naming our snapshot added main navigation. Okay, and then we're pressing enter. It's going to go through and add it's going to add everything here, all those files, into the staging area. And we've created our first commit. And if I can show you the commands for understanding what the commit is, if you press git status, then you can see that what the commits are. You can see that I'm on branch master and everything is clean. I can also do a git log. And what git log does is shows me my commit number. Here's my commit number. It's a really long number. As well as my commit message, which is this. Okay, so my commit number, these commit numbers are unique. Once you make a commit number, you won't get the same number again. Okay, so that's kind of the way it goes. So now that I've done this, I've done almost everything I need to do to put it up on GitHub. If I go back to GitHub, you can see that I've got a couple of additional directions that I need to do. I've done all these. I didn't add a README file. I added everything, right? But what I want is to do this now, these two pieces. So I'm just going to copy these to make it quick. Copy, Control-C, go back and right-click here, which pastes this one automatically. And if I press enter here, it'll push me up to GitHub. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, if you installed Git on your local machine, you need to do some configurations, right? And I'm going to talk about the configuration first. So it's done now. So it's up on GitHub. If you refresh the screen and if you go to that lesson, if you go to github.com, Centennial College, COMP125-M2020-lesson 4-part 2, if you go there, hell, I'll just put this up on eCentennial for you, and then you can just click onto it so you don't have to even work hard, right? If you go to this link, it'll give you that particular site. So I'm just going to add that in. So I'm going to say that, create a link. You guys can't see what I'm doing, but it's okay. I'm going to say GitHub link for week 4, part 2. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you the link on eCentennial, so you can always go up and grab that link, or you just click on the link and it should just take you to this repository. Okay. No, it's not a good. That's not a good way of doing it, Harris. You want to use the git commands, or I'm going to recommend some other tools for you. Bear with me. Okay, we're not quite there yet. This is the preferred method. If you want to be a, I don't know, if you want to, console always gives you more control, but console also is more challenging to use, because if you're not used to the console, for example, if you're new to using the console, and even now that you guys are learning Linux, some of you, then you're going to notice that using the console can be challenging, right? So there's other tools that can help you. We're going to talk about those tools in a second. All right, but let's go back to that thing here. So we've done this, we've pushed up, but one thing that happens is if you've done this for the first time, it's not going to know who you are. So what we want to do is we want to say git config, I think it's list. And what this does is it shows you your configuration list, right? So it talks about the configuration of your files, right? And it says, here's your filter. It talks about your backend, your SSL certificate, and this is what we want: git config, user email, and user name. Notice I've identified myself as who I am. You need to do those things, and if you look at git config online, you need to do that first before you ever do this push in the first place. It'll ask you for who you are, because otherwise how can you push, right? So if you look at git config -- global, right? There is what you want to do is you want to do the git configuration. If you look at git configuration, these are the two things you need to put in: git config -- global, user.name, whatever your name is, full name please, and then git config -- global, user.email, the email that's associated with your GitHub account. Those two things you must do, or else you can't push to Git. It doesn't matter if you're using a tool or if you're using command line. All right. It works. Pushing things manually works, but I don't recommend it. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying that, if you ever want to work work with other people, and it's not just pushing your stuff on or uploading your stuff to GitHub, it's best to use either a commands or a tool. And I'm going to show you the tool, not uploading to GitHub. I mean, it's better than nothing, Harris, but it's it's not as good as what we want, especially if you want to make more than one commit. Okay. All right. So let's get back to this then. So I pushed it up on GitHub. You have these two commands. I'm going to copy these two commands inside the chat window. So if you haven't had a chance to do these commands, please make sure you issue these commands ASAP. I put them in chat for you guys to use. Okay. And please change John Doe with your name and your email address with that email address. Switch them out, please, because you want to do those things. If you don't do those things, then you won't be able to push to GitHub at all. Okay. All right, so wonderful. So we've done this. We've done it on GitHub. Now, what I want you to do, the reason why I pushed on GitHub at all, is because you can always compare my code with your code. You can go here and go to my index.html here on GitHub and take a look and see what I've written here and make sure that you didn't miss something. That's why I'm putting it up here, so you have access to what I'm doing. Okay? Just in case I've gone too fast, and chances are I've gone too fast. All right, so please do that. All right, next. So now that we've done this, I'm just going to put Q for quit and clear, then if you look through here, we have our nav items. And like I told you, I want to make it a black navbar or a dark navbar. So it says navbar light, background light. Geez, do you think it's okay to just change to dark? Let's try this out and see if it's intuitive enough that we understand what to do. So save, go back to our site and see what it looks like. Right? And yay, hello, it's there, right? Black. So this is what it looks like. I'll show you the changes as we go. So COMP125, and all I've changed is on line 16 underneath the header, and on the same line as the nav, I've changed navbar light, background light to navbar dark, background dark. Okay. Changes. Okay, next. I want to change the position of items. Right now it says MR auto on line 25 for me, right? And I want to change this to say ML auto. So in other words, margin left auto. That's what it is. Margin left auto, if I can take away the semicolon, and then press save. Now you can't see the change here because we have our hamburger happening right here, right? But if I double click now, you can see that, yes, indeed, the links are on the right hand side now. Okay, so I've moved them from the left to the right. That's pretty simple for navigation purposes, right? None of these links work, by the way. If you click onto them, they don't do anything. Okay, because they're just there for show. Okay, so that's one part. Next, I want to use Font Awesome. I talked about using Font Awesome last day, and I want to use it this day. So let's install Font Awesome for our web page to make sure we can see those funky fonts. Again, Font Awesome, you can get to it by going to Font Awesome. Just if you search for Font Awesome like this, and you say it's Font Awesome 6 is there, this is pretty cool. It also, if you go there, it says you've got the wrong place. Fort Awesome, we're brewing it. As an example, you get ready with Pro, but what you really want to go is this Icons tab. Icons. And what you do in the icons is you can literally, I'm going to click the X up here. You can search for the icons I want. So for my home page, I want a home icon. Let's search for that like we did last day. So home. And if I look, there's going to be one that pops up. This one. The ones that are grayed out are for the Pro account. That means you have to pay to get these ones, right? But you can choose any of the ones here, the dark ones that are not the Pro account. There's some really cool, cool ones that you can choose, right? We don't have to choose the one that is the home, but I'm going to choose it anyway. And I'm going to just click on this one time, like click. Okay, and what that does is it copies it to my clipboard. I'm going to go back to here, and this has to go before the word home, but inside of the anchor tag. So it's going to go here. So I'm a space, put it right here, Control V, and you can see now that I have an I tag with FAS FA home, FAS FA home. And that's going to create a little icon font through Font Awesome. So press save. And if I go back to my website, which is this one, you can see now that I have a little home right here in the front. It's kind of neat, right? And it's a font, an icon font. So it's not an image. It's using SVG, so it's really cool, and it's super fast. All right, that's why I'm getting you guys to do it. If I want to make the icon larger, let's say, for example, I want to make it so it's FA large, you can do that. FA large does that, right? If I save it now and go back, you can see now that my home icon is actually larger than before, and you can make it extra large. And there's instructions for how to do that. If you go to home, you can see that there's several sizes you can choose from the icon fonts, right? And it tells you how to do it, right? So if I click on this one, as an example, or you can choose, this is solid, you can choose other ones as an example, and if you scroll down here, it talks about how to do the rest. But for now, let's just leave it as is, right? So I'm just starting to use this icon like this, okay? And you can actually look through here and look at docs. If you look at documentation, it talks about how to do it. It talks about how to use the free one compared to the one that's those are the ones that are Pro. how to use different styles. You can choose solid, regular, or light if they're available, right? They're not available all the time. And then if you look through it, it talks about everything on how to use, this stuff. You can also choose sizing icons, so it talks about how to do that. So for example, FA SM, FA small is small icons, FA large, FA 2X, FA 3X, FA 5X, like really big icons. You can do all kinds of stuff, and it really depends on what you want the effect to be. Okay, so kind of really cool. So we just used FA large right here, just to make it slightly larger than the default. Okay, and that's why it looks like this. So we did this, and I want some other ones. So instead of me searching, I know which ones I want. So let's take the ones that this part here, copy it, and I'm going to go to products, right? I'm going to put that in there too. We're going to come back and just change just this part, and we're going to put the same thing in services, and the same thing in about us, and the same thing in contact us. And let's think about the about us. About us should be kind of like an info, right? And maybe contact us should be like a phone. Let's see if they have these. And now the difficult ones are services and products. Maybe from a services perspective, we want some kind of grid. And for products, maybe we want a map, right? And if I save this, and if those do indeed exist, we can go back and we can see that now we have all the fonts. Oops, services didn't quite come out as a grid. Let's see if there's something we can do to get a grid happening. And if I type in under icons, services, so service, let's say, and there might be something that makes sense here. I don't know if I like any of these. Let's type grid, and sometimes it might be something else. So not that, maybe something that looks like this, a grid of products, or this, or something else. I didn't want any of these, but you can choose whatever you want, of course, right? And then, again, whatever you think is suitable is what I always kind of think. Let's just choose this border dash all, which is what this is. So grid doesn't really exist, but border dash all does. So let's just change this. So FA border dash all, and I'm showing you how to use it just like that. So I'm going to go back here, and you can see now that yes, indeed, you have services with that looks like kind of like a border. All right, makes sense. So home, products, services, about us, contact us, and they all look pretty good, right? Yay, Font Awesome installed, right? And that's how you use Font Awesome. Font Awesome can be used for all kinds of fonts, and I would recommend using it for things like login, logout screens, edit, delete buttons, all those kind of things. You want to add icons that make your website look better and more professional, okay? Sometimes you can overdo it with icons too, and you got to be careful about that. One thing is with Bootstrap, the font icons are here as well when you kind of look at the hamburger. So this is good. All right, one thing to note is you need to have a space between the icon and the name of your link. This is good. Okay. So we have a couple things, and I want to put one more thing in place before we move into the JavaScript part. I'm not going to touch this for a while now. Once I have this going, the next time we get together next Monday, I'm just going to copy this site, and we're going to move from here, right? So I'm not going to make like too much more HTML. I'm just showing you how to do it really quick, so I don't have to do all of this myself. I don't have to worry about CSS. I don't have to worry about making a navbar work. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff, right? Okay, so we're good. I want one more thing from Bootstrap. I want another component under Bootstrap. And if you scroll down, there's something called a Jumbotron. See the Jumbotron? So it kind of looks like a card that looks like this, right? And if you scroll down, you can copy it again, right? Here's the Jumbotron. And then if you go back to this, right? The Jumbotron is kind of like, I'd like to put it in my container, and this is kind of where the main content is. Remember, as from a semantic HTML perspective, you should use the main tag for this. So main. Okay, actually there's two components. This one and the bottom nav we're gonna set up. Okay, so here's main, and I'm gonna press Control V. Control V is gonna hit this div tag, and I want to put my Jumbotron inside of a container. So we can say that a couple ways to do this. One is to surround the div tag, this div tag for the Jumbotron, inside of a div tag for the container, like we already have. So let me undo that change. What we can do here in VS Code is if you press Alt and up arrow, you can move everything up inside the editor without copying pasting. Okay? So that's what we've done there. And I can get rid of this main header for now, hello world, and just paste my Jumbotron. There we go. Container, Jumbotron display. Here's hello world. And then there's a paragraph tag that says this is simple hero unit, blah, 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 blah. I don't care about that. And same thing with it uses utility classes, blah, blah, blah. And there's also a primary button. I'm going to get rid of all that and just leave this DH1 in there, hello world, which it already kind of existed. So if I press save, that's what it looks like. And if I go back to this, you're going to see this. Hello world. Does it have to be your actual GitHub username? No, but the Git, your email does. Your email has to correspond with the Git account. Okay, so that's this. And one more thing, I want to put a footer in place. So again, we have our footer. Inside of our footer, I want another navbar. So again, going back to Bootstrap, I want a nav, and in this type, there's navs and navbar. If I go to navbar again, we can see that if I scroll down, there's a brand. It talks about how to do this. There's also a nav, and then forms for navs and text and how to do all that stuff. Color schemes you can switch out and into different kind of containers that you can have, and blah, blah, blah. But what I want is kind of a fixed bottom nav. And this is the one I want. So it's kind of halfway down, or just more than halfway, 3/4 down the page. There's something called fixed bottom. And I want to copy this fixed bottom, copy it, and down in here I'm going to paste it. Doop. Fixed bottom. All right, so it's got a nav, and inside there's something called fixed bottom. I want to get rid of this brand. And I want to put in a copyright statement, like copyright 2020, something like that. All rights reserved. So you can use an H4 tag for this, something like that. H4, you can say, and copy, right? Copyright 2020, all rights reserved, which is what you're going to see in some websites. Okay? So your copyright statement usually goes on the bottom. So footer, and it's going to be on the bottom. Notice it says navbar light, background light. So it's going to be a light navbar that goes on the bottom of your page. Let's see how that looks. And it's going to be sticky bottom. So it's going to fix to the bottom, and it won't matter where your content is. So if I go back to this, and if I go to here, you can see now indeed there is a navbar on the bottom, but it is fairly dark, right? If you want to change this to some other color, we can use custom CSS for that, or they do have some suggestions for navbar colors, like this one. Navbar dark, background primary, the blue bar. Navbar light, background light. Or you can also choose a style. This is an in-house style, star, background color, whatever you want. So light means the colors in the background too, this one, right? So I can choose a different color. Let's say I wanted this color or a gray color. Let's just choose this. So navbar light, but the style, instead of background light, let's choose this part. So we'll kill this. And instead of this being this color, we can choose something else, like let's say kind of a gray blue color if you're really interested in what that is. And by the way, if you don't know what gray blue is, you can just put in something like gray blue, or kind of light gray, light blue. Let's say light gray, light green, whatever you want, right? Let's put light gray. And then what this looks like then will be a light gray bottom, so black and gray, which is not so bad. Kind of goes. So you can choose that color with whatever you want. And this is the power that you have with Bootstrap. I mean, it's really quick and dirty, and you can make your content look the way you want. So there's your hello world. Are you with me? So show me your thumbs up or your check mark if you're with me. Okay. Some people, if you're not with me, show me that X if you're really struggling. It's okay to do that. There's no harm or shame in it. I know it's all new for some of you, and it's totally fine. You don't have to be worried about it. This is a safe environment. A little bit fast. I know it's a little bit fast. Just bear with it. You're going to get through it, guys. Because once you have this, you're good to go. Remember, we're not going to do a lot of this all the time. All right, so we're good. I'm going to put this back to where it's supposed to go. So just double click. Maybe this could be even a little bit smaller on this side. So there we are. This is our hello world. We've got our copyright. And now it's a great place to put it up on GitHub again. So just like before, I want to put this up on GitHub. So I want to say git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say added more elements. I'm not going to specify. Obviously, I could have made multiple commits here, but I'm not going to do that. And then git push origin master. And what this is going to do is going to push it back up to GitHub. And now you'll have all my changes, everything I did online, which is where I want you to check. I want you to check online for these things that I'm sharing with you. Okay? This is good. But what if you're not someone who's comfortable with command line and you don't want to use command line for Git? Are there some good tools? Yes, there are. Here are a couple. SourceTree is one of the most popular UIs for Git, and it works for Mac and Windows. So instead of you doing things with command line, this would be a separate side-by-side tool that you would use. It also has a terminal option where you can go in and do some terminal commands. I think this is a great option for people who want to get started with Git and GitHub. And it gives you all the things you need to know to set up stuff. There's some great documentation and videos on how to use SourceTree, an amazing tool, and it's free. Okay, so SourceTree, I guess I got to put this up on our links. I told you, I got like 1 million links and downloads for me to give you this week. And, you know, so that way you have everything you need. So this is SourceTree. I'll say download optional. SourceTree, download optional. Okay, so that's that one. I think it's a good one. I know that some of my friends prefer SourceTree over command line, even though they're developers. There's no harm in it, and there's no you don't have to be ashamed or anything like that. If you don't like command line, you don't like command line. People are used to user interfaces, so this is a user interface. Another really good one that I like a lot is Gitkraken. Gitkraken. I like this more than SourceTree. Why? Well, it's got dark mode and it's a little bit more colorful, and it comes with a bunch of other stuff, Gitkraken boards and Gitkraken timelines if you're using Agile, right? So this is kind of cool. Gitkraken, right? And it's also free to use, so a really good one. So you don't have to do things with command line if you don't want to, right? Remember, in computers, there's always an option. So more than one way of doing things. Gitkraken, download, we'll say optional. Okay, so again, that'll be inside of our links up on this. So week 4 is going to be a week with links and information and all kinds of stuff. So refer back to week 4 is what I'm going to tell you. If you don't know how to do any of this stuff, go back to week 4, take a look at it, and there's lots of links and downloads. Maybe what I'll do is I'll make another section and I'll put all these links and downloads inside this other section inside of week 4, so it doesn't pollute your content area, but it's a lot. Okay, so that's Gitkraken. And also, lovely. And also, the next thing is that we also have GitHub, desktop.github.com. GitHub itself produces a UI. Not as beautiful as SourceTree or even Gitkraken, but it does exist, right? So let's just grab this one too. So, so those are the 3 I recommend. None of them are bad. Different ones have different advantages over the others, right? So GitHub Desktop is what it's called. By the way, GitHub Desktop works with GitHub itself. So where you see download or open with desktop, that's where this comes into play, right? Optional. That's the advantage of using GitHub Desktop. These guys are killing me with these pings. I'm gonna have to shut Slack down. I love my buddies, but they're killing me. All right, there we go. All right, so that's the GitHub Desktop. All right, so that's another option that if you want to. I think there's some really good advantage to using all these things. And the final thing that I want to show you before we move on to some JavaScript finally is the GitHub education. I think it's really huge to get this. By the way, it's also for my friends who are from COMP125. I probably should have showed you this earlier as well, but GitHub education, oh my God, the stuff that it has, that it gives you for free. So there's something called the GitHub Student Developer Pack, all right? And you can get that from education.github.com/pack. And if I go get the pack, I'm gonna give you this link on eCentennial in a second. And depending on who you are, there's individual students and or teachers, depending on who you are. Let's go to get student benefits, right? Then you can sign up and you can get your benefits, right? So that's get the pack. That's how you can do it. And let me just show you what's included in this thing, right? Oh my God, look at all these things. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Namecheap, a free domain from Namecheap, name.com. Unity, of course, is always free. AWS Educate, Microsoft Azure Minutes, DigitalOcean, which is an outfit here in Toronto. There you can build your own VM online. JetBrains, all that stuff that you want to download the recent IDEs. And like I said to you before, one of the things that's awesome from JetBrains is something called WebStorm, which is, I would say, competitive with Visual Studio Code. Bootstrap Studio, crazy amount of stuff. GitHub, Heroku, which is an online service we can use. I'm just gonna look at the big ones that I can see that are GitKraken, pro account with GitKraken, which is awesome. So you get all that pro stuff for a year, free, right? Atom, another thing. SendGrid to send emails through your websites. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. There's just so many good things to get here, guys. There's no reason not to sign up for this bundle, and it's completely free for students. So I highly recommend this one. I'm going to put this as a link that you should totally grab on here on the URL. Yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing the stuff you can get, and that's what I'm saying. So this is a GitHub Education Pack, or it's called the. I got to scroll all the way to the top. GitHub Student Developer Pack. GitHub Student Developer Pack, and I'll say highly recommended. All right, so make sure you grab that, you sign up for it. I think there's just, like I said, there's no reason not to do it. And it lasts for, a lot of it lasts a year. You can do a lot with it, and it can last through most of your time at Centennial for some of the stuff you're doing. And you can always sign up. There's some also other specials you can do. Once you start using it, I think it's a great opportunity for you to learn how to use some of these tools too. That's why they give it to you. They want you to learn the tools, right? So that's cool. So that's all the tools that I can offer you so far today. I'm just going to kind of X out of all these. I'm probably not going to need Bootstrap for now, so I've kind of done everything I need. But let's get back here to this, okay? And let's do a little bit of JavaScript now. Yay! All right, so we've kind of hit the HTML hard, and I did that for a reason, because I know that some of you are not great at HTML. I know that some of you are most of you are probably not that great with CSS. Because CSS and HTML, if you've only touched them once in your previous course and you're not doing anything now, it's quite challenging to be good, right? And this is not a CSS or HTML course, so I just wanted to offer you quick ways of getting things going, especially with your assignments and stuff like that. That's why I give you all these tools, okay? So there's no excuses like, Tom, I don't know how to do this stuff. I don't know where to get this information. You got tons of tools now, more than you can possibly even use. All right, so now let's go into scripts, into my app.js, and we'll do some talking about JavaScript a little bit now. So we talked about this. So there's a couple ways to write this start function here, all right? Does anyone know of another way to write the same function, the same start function, but a different way? Anyone know of a different way? Faith, is that a thumb up because you know how to do it? Or have you left that thumb up from before? And Devesh, same thing? Or do you know how to do it? Cool. If you know how to do it, how would you do it? How would you write this function differently? because this is a named function. There's another way to do this. Sorry, I forgot the thumb. Okay, no problem. And how about Devesh? Do you know how to do this, Devesh, or you forgot? Oh, see, now I was thinking you guys are going to surprise me and you knew some stuff. Tiago, do you know how to do it? What would you do? Because I see you've got a check mark there too. Maybe you forgot. Oh, see, now I really feel bad. No one knows how to. All right, so this is a couple ways. So this is a named function. All right, so we have to talk about named functions. And then there's also something else. You can also, declare a function in a different way. So this is kind of the declarative format. And the way it works is you put let. Remember, there's no such thing as var in our course. And the name of the function, start, equal to an anonymous function. So this is the other way to do it. So let me just comment this out. By the way, commenting it out, you can go to edit, and then you can just toggle line comments or block comments. That kind of comes in and out, right? The toggle, again, if you notice what it is Shift-Alt-A. A little bit meaty for you to do that. I'm just going to copy this part in there. They are virtually identical in terms of functionality. But I'll tell you, even though you and I, as C# developers, prefer this method, chances are you prefer this one. Okay, because this is something we can see function, the name function, and then the keyword start, right, the name. This is more versatile, and you may not understand why, but think about this, what this is. What is this thing? Well, really what we have is we can break it down like this, right? We have an anonymous function that we've created. Think about this as a delegate. And this anonymous function that we've created, we're going to make a reference to this function and store the reference as a pointer inside of this variable. It's not an arrow function. I'll show you the arrow function format next. All right, so that's the three different ways of doing it. So this is one, this is declarative, right? And so really what it is it's like a function that you have a variable that points to an anonymous function. That's what it looks like. And the last way, let's just comment this one out. So again, shift, like it says here, Shift-Alt-A, right? Shift-Alt-A. And the next one is the other way. Okay, so now there's another way of doing the function, right? So instead of using the function keyword altogether, we kind of go outside the function keyword. So you can say you still use the declarative way, so start. But instead of using function, we replace it with just braces. Braces, fat arrow, and then curly braces. And this is another way of doing it. This is the modern way of doing it, believe it or not. And functionally, for the most part, they're mostly equivalent. This one is not the same as these. And we'll talk about what the difference is between all these ways. But more or less, if I press save, and if I look here on the right, and if I look to inspect, you can see that at the bottom on the console, I still get app started. Okay, so these are the three ways that you should know how to do it. Function start, let start function, or let start with some kind of arrow function. Those are the three ways. Are you with me? I want to see thumbs up or check marks, please. And please remember to take them down. Otherwise, I'm going to say, he knows how to do it. It's Tiago. He knows, right? And then I'm going to be like, Tiago, help me. And then he's going to go, I don't know. Or I forgot. I left my hand. Or he's going to silently put it down, right? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just making fun. I'm playing. I'm having a good time. This is the thing I love to do. All right. So, and it's not just you, Tiago, but everyone else too. Teach should have a function to clear all. Yeah. Well, let's see. That would be nice. That would be really nice if we can just like click on a button and then clear everything. I wish that we had that. There is actually, I can clear it all. There is a button that does it. If I click clear all, it clears all those things. But thank you, Joseph. I could do that, but I just want you guys to take your hand down. How about that? All right, let me just continue. So there's three different ways of doing this thing. So again, start, they're all starts, right? And they all work as a callback function. And the other way to do this is instead of using a named function, which is all these are in effect a named function because they're called start, we can use an anonymous function in here as well. So the way that would work is Shift-Alt-A. We could just put in this part or this part here inside of here. Now, some people are going to get mad at me when I do this. If I do this, right, and here's the one way of doing it, I could do this too, right? I could totally do this. And I know you're a C# developer out there, and you're going to look at it and go, oh man, why would Tom do this? This is so ugly looking. But in effect, think about what this is doing. If I never ever do anything else in my function, I only use it ever once, this makes sense. If I'm never going to call it again, this makes sense, right? And again, you can also do it with a fat arrow function this way too. You can always convert it to make it look like this. This is an inline function or anonymous inline function right here, okay? Where you're using kind of like a delegate, that's what this is, or a lambda function, lambda expression, really what this is, in JavaScript, to activate the function inline. So the callback, there isn't a callback that you're leaving the function, this add event listener. If you hover over it, it'll give you that information, right? That's why I love Visual Studio Code. It gives you all this wonderful stuff. It says the type is load. Let me just look at that again. The listener is this window. Here's the event. Here's the fat arrow. And it's listening for any. And then there's some options, some Boolean options, and an add event listener options, and then it returns void. That's what it says. Okay? So all kinds of information. So again, this is okay if we're only going to get there once. But we're not going to go there once. We're going to go there, start a bunch of times. So this is not okay. Because otherwise we would just boil in here and that's it. We would never be able to access that again. So let's undo. And we'll go back to this. So now, the question for you guys is, which method do you prefer? Me personally, I'm going to stick with this method up here for now because it's easier for us to talk about. But I want you to know that there's other ways to do the same thing, okay, with the let. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these. Again, it's on the video, if you know, but we know there's other ways of doing the same things. And they're functionally, for the most part, equivalent. You're going to see us use it in a different place at times, okay? So that's the first thing about functions. This is interesting. And we also, up until now, you've also done things like done other stuff. Console log is really interesting. For example, let's take a look at console log. So notice that inf log does this. But what about if I go console.info? Have you tried this stuff out? Console info, it kind of very similar, right? There's also console warn, right? Which actually makes it yellow. And you can also cast an error if you want to, right? Where you can make it red. So depending on what you want, you can actually stop execution manually. This is like throwing an error, or you can declare anything you want for the console to do. Console has a ton of stuff. And if you actually go console dot, there's a ton of stuff. Console assert, console warning, console error, console clear, console count, there's blah, like tons of stuff, right? And also, the console has a bunch of other stuff that you can do in here too. So if I do a console log, and if I use template strings like this, and then what I can do is I can specify a some kind of style for the console. Consoles can be styled too. So if I do like, you know, I'm going to put like %C here. And then over here, what you can do is you can type in the style. So if I want this font to be blue, I can just say color blue. And if I did that and I press enter, you can see now that my console here is blue, right? I can also change the color of, or the size, right? So I can say like, so remember, just like any CSS, if I want to choose the size of my font, I can font size, let's say 24, right? So you can separate that with a semicolon, and say font dash size, I don't know, 24 pixels. And if I did that, you can see that my console will grow very big, right? There we go. And I'm going to take dark mode off for a second so you can see it. Or actually this is just dark mode anyway. But you can see that it's pretty big, and maybe blue is no good. I can change that to white. So if I want my console background to be white, I can totally do that, and I can make it really large. And this is very useful. Why? because what you can do is you can color your consoles so that it can look like whatever you want for good feedback for you. So for now, we're going to use this format. %C basically says I want to use some kind of style. I want to inject some style, and then the style comes after the console out. Okay, makes sense? Cool. So that's console stuff. So very simple. Also, what we want to think about is scope. So in JavaScript, and this is why we're never going to use var. Let's use var for one time. Okay, I lied. We're going to use var one time. If I go var, and if I go, my number, right, is equal to 10, as an example. Notice that JavaScript is loosely typed. I mean, my number could be 10, and you know what? My number can also equal to hello, right? I mean, that can happen with JavaScript, and JavaScript's not going to really complain. Which is a terrible thing. I can kind of go in here and say like my num, I want a console log, right? So console log my num, right? And if I did that and press save, you can see at the bottom, I'm going to get hello and not 10, right? It doesn't really care, right? Which is a really bad thing. Bad, all right? So what if I said like my my num var 10, right? And what if I put this inside of these curly braces? So do you think that that var my num 10 is going to be available out here in the wild, right? Well, let's see how that works. Let's do another function. So we'll make another function and see what protects var and what doesn't. Okay, so we'll say function, we'll call this second, all right? And we'll say that I want to now console log my num. So this console log my num. And we'll call second from start. So we'll say second, hey, go to that one after this one, right? So I go to start first, and then we go to second, okay? And you can see that it lights up when I'm calling it. If I didn't call it, you can see that it goes gray in Visual Studio Code. It tells you that it's not really being used. All right, so I can go back here, and then I can press save, and my num is not defined. Yay! My num, I don't know what that means, right? So this is good. My num var works fine. But what if, right, I define my num inside of a for loop, right? So I go for loop. Let's try this again. So I do a for, and by the way, there's for each, for in, for of, and you can get all that from Visual Studio Code. If I press for and press enter, notice it says let. Let's change this to var. All right, so var index equals 0, and where index is less than 10, as an example, index plus plus, and let's just output this to the console. Console log index, right? And what you're going to get is a list of things that look like this. Let's get rid of second because there is no second anymore. By the way, you notice that I get immediate output here, which is what I want. And it happens right before app started as expected. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yay. Okay. Cool. Should I be able to do now this? Console log index. Yes or no? The answer is I can't. That's the problem with var, my friends. var does something called hoisting. So what happens is the interpreter, the browser, goes through, looks for all variable declarations, and hoists them to the top of that particular scope, right? So for example, it says, hey, look, we've got a var here. Let's take var index and put it here. All right, that's what it does. And any other thing that we have, any kind of function declarations and all that stuff gets hoisted as well, right? Which is very bad. So that's why we don't ever want to use var in almost any case anymore, right? Because it's old. We don't have to do it. We can replace it with let. And if we did that, you can see now that let does protect the variable. So index doesn't make any sense outside of this context, which is exactly what we're hoping that it would do. That's the difference between let and var. And please don't ever use var unless you have to. Okay? It's huge. It can create errors. You expect it to die index, or if you reuse it somewhere else, or or something else by accident, and you'll get a weird effect. Okay. The other thing that I want to mention is that, so this is the for loop. There's also comparison operators. There's truth-C and false-C kinds of comparison operators. For example, I don't know if you guys went through this, but you can do something like if, I'm going to declare a variable, so we'll say let x is equal to 5, and you can say if, in brackets, x is equal to 5, right? If that's true, then I want to do a console log, right? So console log, we can say x is equal to 5, right? That's what happens, right? Because now, do you think it's going to trigger? Right? X is equal to 5. Wait a minute. What? But I said 5 in quotations. And if x is equal to, well, I didn't put equal, so that was the first error, and it didn't complain. How about now? Do you think it's going to complain now? No, it's not going to complain, because guess what? 5 is going to take 5, it's going to convert it to a number, and it's going to try its best to compare it to x. Bad. So what we want to use instead of equal is triple equal. Please always use triple equal as opposed to equal. When you do this, now you got nothing. What the difference between equal and triple equal is, one is somewhat equal, and the other one is exactly equal. So somewhat equal is like, it's kind of like, well, if it fits the shape of 5, if it's a string or a number, I'm good. That's equal. The other one is, no. It's got to match both the shape, it's got to be a 5, and it's got to have the same data type, number, right? There are data types in JavaScript, right? Number, string, bool, and a bunch of other ones, array, and whatever, right? So all those data types exist, but using triple equals is the way you want to do it with exactly equal. Somewhat equal, bad. Don't ever do, somewhat equal. It's kind of like kind of equal, right? But not really equal, right? So please be careful about that. It's bad. Okay, so triple equal, the way to go. And also, same thing with greater than or equal to. If it's greater than or equal to 5, that would work, right? Because it is greater than or equal to something like 5. But if you press greater than or double equal to 5, then that would be not good. In fact, it's a syntax error. So how does that work? Greater than or equal to 5. Greater than or equal to 5, like this. Oh man, I don't know what to do here. Greater than or equal to. It's going to work, right? No matter what you do. Greater than or equal to 5. It's 5, kind of, right? I want to say equal. That's what I want to say. Or equal, right? But it doesn't work like that, right? So be careful with the comparison operators, guys. You want to really compare strings more than anything else, because you might get a weird effect. You think it's a number that's only going to hit a number, but JavaScript doesn't care, right? There's ways of checking this, though. There's ways of checking, right? And we can do some comparison later on. But just be aware of this. Switch case statements are kind of interesting in JavaScript, and you guys have learned them before. Switch cases work kind of like in C#. I'm not going to go through those again. They're pretty simple in terms of the way they function, and it takes both numbers and strings. A good example of this is in C++. It doesn't allow you to do anything but numbers, right? So it doesn't take switch statements. Don't take strings. Strings are complex, data types. So it doesn't really work, right? So I wanted to point this out to you. Also, sometimes what I want to do is, and this is part of the debugging part. I really haven't covered debugging, but really at the end of the day, this is where we are: debugging and error handling. Let's go through this a bit. There's different kinds of bugs. It says a logic kind of issue, a syntax error, and as well as another programming bug. You guys know this from C#. I'm not going to go through it. You guys should have learned that in Programming 1. So it talks about all this stuff, and then it talks about how to identify bugs. Oh, var, that's a bug right there, right? And by the way, here's another one. Please never, ever use document.write. Document.write, it erases your document and replaces it with other stuff. Never. Please never use document.write should be outlawed, right? It should not exist. It's a terrible function. And so we don't do that. The other thing we want to also not do very often, only for debugging purposes, is an alert. Okay, so for example, instead of a console log, if I made it an alert, alerts are bad, are really bad. Why? Because if I go back to my web page, it interrupts my flow. Look, here's an alert, and I can't do anything until I click OK, ever, right? So again, really bad. You don't want to use alerts unless it's absolutely necessary. It can mess you up, right? So please try and avoid using alerts. All right. And again, if you notice this, we're good, but it's going to give me this alert, and don't do it. All right. It's really bad. So so there's some basic rules. Alert makes sense when you want to confirm with the user, when it's a critical thing. Are you sure you want to delete this, Mr. User, right? Or Mrs. User? Yes? Then give me an alert. I want to do this. Or you can also use a confirm, right? Which is kind of a yes or no. Confirm or alert, right? So again, if I was to say this, you can say it's like x is equal to 5, OK or cancel. If I click cancel, it's going to be false. If I click OK, it's going to be true. What do I mean by that? I mean that I can do a comparison. I can say if, and say something like, are you sure? Let's do are you sure? Are you sure? Right? If are you sure, confirm, right, is true, then do a console log. X is definitely 5. Right? And by the way, you don't have to use curly braces, but semicolons, but I recommend you do. Or else, right? Else, oh God, that was bad. Else, you can say a console log that I don't know what maybe you can say that X is maybe 5. I don't know, something weird. So so this is how confirm works. It's like an alert. Are you sure? Then I can press OK, and you can see that X is definitely 5. And if I refresh that page, you can go back and go cancel, and then you say X is maybe 5. So the positive, if you press OK, the user presses OK, then it's yes, true. Otherwise, it's false. Okay, so that's kind of how confirms work. Confirms are useful. All right, alerts not so much, unless you want to make sure that hey, you broke something, or because you're interrupting the control flow of the program. You don't want to do that. It's a terrible user experience, right? So that's kind of how this works. So that's why we don't use vars, and please be careful about your comparison operators. They're funny how they work. Okay. But let's suppose I have an error. So let's suppose I have this and it's true, and I want to. I can use a breakpoint in the gutter in VS Code. I can use a breakpoint here. Okay. You can add a breakpoint, and just like you would in Visual Studio. Right, and then what you do is up here you have this little run, and it looks like a little bug, right? So if I click this run bug, it says, okay, so what do I want to do? I can run and debug. I can use a Node.js debug terminal. I want to do this one, run and debug, and hopefully you guys should get the same options as me. All right, so I'm going to click this one, run and debug, and then it says it's automatic, right? It's going to kind of generate my window. It's going to download any package I need, dependencies, and so on. And then what it should do in a second, for me, it's going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't know why it's all doing all this stuff. It asks me to do which one do I want to do. Do I want to do it in Chrome, Edge? Where do I want to debug? I definitely want to debug in Chrome because that's my thing. I'm not going to use Preview, Chrome. And what this will do is it'll create a little debug script. Okay? A debug script. It's not working yet for you, by the way. I will talk about how this works in a second. This debug script lives inside the .vs code folder that's been created for you. So if you look inside your solution now, you have a new .vs code folder with this launch.json file that's been created for you. Okay? And here it is, launch.json. So if I go back to debug, right, and I click this run, this is when I start debugging. Watch this. So I start. What it does is it'll launch a second version of Chrome that will stop when it gets to that point to load. It says site can't be reached. And why? Because it's looking for 8080. I got to configure it a little bit. Let's configure it. So it's not going to look for 8080. We're going to run LiteServer on 3000. So let's just change this to 3000 to make this work properly. There we go. Okay. And let's try it again. So run. Yay. And now it runs like normal, right? But it actually goes here and gives you some information. Let me just make this larger for you to look at. So here's some debugging. It gives you a whole pile of information, actually. Look, it says x is equal to 5. It gives you your variable names here, or your variable numbers. It talks about the global scope. It gives you a lot of information about the global scope as well, right? And you can put several things there. If I hover over, you know, as an example, you can see variable values as I hover, right? Anything that's hoverable or that you have values for, you can see right here. You can, up here, step over, so you can ignore that, right? So it goes to here, right? It tells you what it is and the scope and the caller and all that kind of stuff, right? Or you can step into or out. And if I do that, it would bring up the web page again, because right now what's happening is you can see that that is working. It says, are you sure, right? If I press OK, it's going to take me back to my control flow. And I'm back to here. It's stopping me because I'm inside of here. I can just press continue, and then I'm back into my web page. You can see here I'm back in my web page, and it's working as normal. So it's interesting how it works. So this is one way of doing debugging right in VS Code. Amazing. I really like it, and it's super useful. Why? It's good to inspect variables this way as opposed to do console outs. Console logs, not a great way of doing complex debugging. Why? Because you got to remove them afterwards, right? And I got to go through and remove all the console logs and whatever. Sometimes there's other ways of doing it too, but for the most part, that's what it does. All right, so that's how you can add breakpoints. You can do it here. Also, there's another way to do it, and I'm going to point this out to you. I'm not as much of a fan as this way, okay? But you can do it here actually. So if you look at sources, again, there's inside your again. I got this by going right click and then inspect, and then it gives me elements, console, sources. Let's just make this larger for you so you can see it. Okay, so here it is. This is the actual browser, right? So elements gives me all the elements that I can go through each of the objects in my browser, my HTML stuff. Console is what we've seen already. Sources is actually looking at your code. So I can go to sources, go to scripts, I can go to my app.js, right? And inside the browser, right, I can put a breakpoint right in here, right? And I can do the same thing I did before when I run these things. So if I was to relaunch stuff, right, let's say for example I want to stop right here on line 11 like I did before, there's my breakpoint, right? And again, notice that if I refresh this page, the breakpoint stays. It doesn't go away. So again, I have the same functionality here in this part. I can look at the scope. I can still see this. I can still hover over here to get information. So you can do this right in the browser. Why I don't like it is because it's smaller and I have less control. I want to swap from one tab to the other. You can still do it here, but it becomes a little bit more tedious when you have multiple files to work with compared to Visual Studio Code. So can you do it? Yes. Would I do it? Probably not, right? And again, but it has the same controls that you have. If you can't make Visual Studio Code work, this is a great alternative for me, okay? And again, I can continue, right? And I can take off. I can just take the breakpoint off by clicking it on and off. That's how it works. So in a nutshell, that's debugging in the browser. It's really great, again, as an alternative. But I recommend highly, right, that you'd rather do it inside of VS Code in your IDE here, right? It's way better, okay? So that is another way of doing it. You can also use, and something that they talk about in the book, they talk about different kinds of errors, and of course, all those things. They talked about this, the error message that you want to get, and so on. in Firefox. I use Firefox. I use Chrome. Firefox is a great little thing. Window alert. Again, highly don't recommend window alert unless you absolutely need to do it for debugging purposes. If you want your program to stop, use window alert. But the problem with it is people leave it in, and then their program is pretty ugly afterwards. Okay, so then it talks about how to do this with a bunch of vars, and it's trying to get you to decode, and it talks about the drawbacks that you can use and how to trace errors with console log. We talked about different ways of coloring the console as well, which is part of the debugging part, and it goes through here and talks about how to do that. We can comment out things. Commenting out is pretty good. You can comment things out and comment things back in as a way of doing it. We've done this in other languages as well, so that's why I'm breezing through this thing. It's not like it's anything new or special. And we're using debugging tools. See where it says IE here? I don't use IE or Edge for anything, right? Because it's not great, man. And you're not going to get a great experience. And again, the one thing that I always look at when it comes to, and IE has come a long way, to be fair to Microsoft and the team that they have there. But if you look at HTML5.com, right? I mean, one thing that that it does for you. Oh, this is for sale now. Haha. It used to be something that actually had meaning before, right? But they used to be able to do. So that's what happens with websites. They kind of come and go, unfortunately, with HTML tools, web tools, right? Sometimes the web tool will work, and then the next time the web tool is gone, like we just saw. So from a viewport testing perspective, there's a bunch of stuff you can do, and I'm just gonna see if I can find one that gives me viewports. Just a second here, guys, because I had a bunch of links for this before, and I think they're gone, to be honest with you. And that's what happens. That's another thing. Remember we talked about this from a course perspective. You do some of this stuff and you love it from a penetration perspective, and then what ends up happening is it's gone, right? So stat counter used to be something I always would look at. It talks about worldwide penetration of browsers and stuff. This is a pretty good one as well. So you can see that Chrome is used throughout the world. 63% of the world uses Chrome, 18% Safari, and then followed up by Firefox, which is unfortunate because I think Firefox is better than Safari. I think Safari needs an update from Apple. It's pretty good. And then you can see how this works. You can also look at the differences between desktop, tablet, and console browsers, Chrome, and then IE, and then Firefox, and then Safari. This is good. And you can actually vary for the type of browser you look at, and who is your audience is really what this is doing. You can also edit the chart data, which you can say something like, well, instead of worldwide, I want to look at Canada. What's it like here in Canada? What is my market look like? I don't really care about tablet or console. I just care about desktop browsers. And let's just view the chart, see what it looks like, right? And so it'll show you the desktop browser market share in Canada. And you can see that, again, this is closer to what the reality is. Most uses Chrome. Second is IE. Why? People don't know how to change this because IE is a default browser in Windows. They don't know how to change out of this and go into Chrome or Firefox. So that's why I believe it's such a high value. But Firefox, my friends, is one of the best browsers that are out there, right? So take a look. So it says, for all the programs, I'm looking at some of that I have done so far, I've just used examining the code and console log for checking variable values. What situation would we need the debugger? When it becomes more complex. If you've done very simple programs, then what ends up happening is you can probably look at them and figure them out. But sometimes, depending on how you're passing the data, for example, if you're making a web game, which I've done, right? Then debugging becomes a skill. All right, it's much more complex. There's many variables in the local scope, and you want to make sure that the values are right. And we're going to get to that when we get back to Ajax. You'll also see that there's some issues with that as well. All right, so let's go back a couple of steps, to this, which is what I want, and I want to get rid of that thing because it's driving me crazy. So let's go back to VS Code for a second. So I definitely don't want this to happen. I think that's crazy that we're doing a confirm. And let's just get rid of all this. But I'm just showing you this from a debugging perspective. All right, debugging. All right, great. So going back to that then. So again, it talks about this. It helps trace lines of code, and it talks about different ways of doing that, and the debugging window, and all the things that we've covered so far. For the most part, I think I've covered most of this thing. How to set breakpoints, how to use the tools. These are the same tools that you should be used to using in C#. You should have learned some of these debugging techniques in C# already. But if you haven't, some of the stuff that they're talking about here is applicable to almost every other language. C++, C#, Java, Python, all of them have debugging tools that are almost identical to this list of stuff. Okay, so there's nothing that's new. Oh yeah, the call stack is huge. Hey, that's another one that you want to look at, the call stack. And the call stack, basically, if I have a function within a function within a function, and I want to see which function messed up, as an example, that's definitely something that I can do. So yeah, let's go back to that. So again, if I want to put a breakpoint here, and I want to go here and press play for this, and then it brings up a little browser, and then you have the watch, and then look at the call stack. The call stack is like which function was called last, and that's the one that's on the stack right now, the start function. It tells us if we have a problem where in the whole thing the problem is. So let me show you this. So let's say, for example, instead of this, we had another function called second again. So let's say we're going to say, hey, go to second. Oh, second. And by the way, declaring functions doesn't matter. We can declare a function below or above because it hoists them, right? Hoists the function's name. Nothing you can do about that. So function second, and then we'll say console log. This is second function. Okay, just to give you an example of this. Then, and I want to do a kind of a breakpoint here, and then I run it. Now, take a look at the call stack. This is kind of interesting. So you can see how it went from start. That was the bottom of the stack. Think about the stack as a stack of cards, and then second. So second is the second function that's been called in the call stack. The first function was the second start function. And now, when we leave the second function, so if I continue, if I kind of step over, take a look at the call stack. It goes back to start. It pops the second function off of the stack, and now we have the start function that's the one that's on the stack. The only one that's on the stack is the start function, if that makes sense. So call start, the call stack is really interesting to debug where in your code the problem lies, if you have a problem. Okay. So that's really cool for call stack stuff. Just want to cover everything before we go. I know we're running overtime, guys. Bear with me another moment, and then we'll stop for the day. There's really not much else that's in here. We examine the call stack. Oh yeah, throwing and catching exceptions. I'm going to cover throwing and catching exceptions next day, because I think they need more love than a couple lines of code, because we want to use try catch for this. So I want to kind of talk about try catch and the good things and bad things. Notice, thank God they're using the triple equals. That's good. But try catch is something that we want to do, and we also want to use the throw. The throw keyword. Throw keyword is kind of like console.error. That's what it does. All right, and we want to use a throw if, for example, there is an error that's been detected. Okay. So again, for the most part, if you read the PowerPoint, I think it covers everything you need, but we're going to cover try catch in another video. All right. All right. Does anyone have any issues before we go for the day? I know just to recap what we covered today, a little bit of, I know I ran over, I'm so sorry, a little bit of JavaScript. I wanted to get you into kind of like functions. I want to bring you up to speed with some of that stuff, and the format of our files, and everything else. But more or less, right now, you have a good starting place that we can come from next class. Can I explain this problem next class? I will. I'm going to look at that in a second. So, if you hang out, I'll tell you what the problem is. Okay. But that's kind of what we also talked about some debugging techniques, and for the most part, most of the debugging techniques that you know already from other languages apply here in C#. In JavaScript. JavaScript, C#, C++. For the most part, they're the same. Any questions for me before we go? Okay, we want to talk about your computer crashing. Anyone else? Just Seong and you? Okay, I'll Seong come back to you. Anirudh, you're good? Or is that no? That means no, right? Okay. Will you be updating GitHub at the end of each class? Would like to know some way I would know if I should watch broadcasts or just follow along and not worry about falling behind. Yeah, I will be pushing to GitHub every time. And like I said, there's really not much to push at this point because, I mean, I could push the second function. Let's just do that now, just so that you're up to speed with me. But we're going to probably delete this next day because I'm going to keep working with this over and over again, but in a different repository. Okay? So, yeah, so what I would do is I would go here to GitHub. You can do GitHub in here too. That's another thing I forgot to tell you. So I can make a GitHub message. These are the changes. I can add all this to the changes. God, I almost forgot doing this. And then what I can say is added second function. You can kind of do this user interface. Use the check mark for the commit message, and then I can go here and push, and you're good to go. So that's another way you could do that as well. It's all part of Visual Studio Code, and you can use that, but you still have to initialize GitHub on the command line, if I'm not wrong, at least up till now. Okay? Lots of stuff you can do here with GitHub. Any other questions before we stop recording? Okay, guys, I'm going to hang out for people who have problems, and then I'm going to start with Seong. And if anyone else has problems, you can hang out, and we'll have a conversation. But class is officially going to be over after I stop recording. Okay? So let's stop now.